It was the 15th of June again. The air in the small town of Elmsworth carried a soft breeze, filled with the scent of blooming lavender and damp earth. As usual, the town was quiet, except for the rustling leaves in the old cemetery on the hill. Every year on this date, like clockwork, a man would walk silently up the winding path, his coat slightly too long, and his hat pulled down low over his face. Nobody in the town knew his name, but everyone knew his habit. He came once a year, on the same day at the same time, precisely 3 in the afternoon. He would bring a single white rose, slightly wilted, as if it had traveled a long distance. He would stand in front of a specific grave for about 15 minutes. Sometimes he would sit on the stone bench beside it. Sometimes he would whisper something. Then he would leave, without speaking to anyone. The grave belonged to Eleanor Grace Whitmore. She had died exactly 15 years ago, at the age of 24. Mia, the young woman who worked at the flower shop across the road, had watched this ritual for the last 4 years. Each time, she noticed the man's shoulders drooped a little more, his walk slowed, but his face remained unreadable. Today, she decided to follow him, not to confront, just to understand. She waited until he disappeared behind the gate. Then, she left her post and crossed the street, her heart pounding slightly. Her boss, Mrs. Linton, saw her slip away but did not stop her. Even she had grown curious over the years. Mia crept along the stone path, her shoes crunching softly on the gravel. She paused behind a large oak tree when she saw him kneeling by the grave. From her hiding place, she could see his lips moving. He was not crying, just talking, like he was telling a story to someone who had been waiting all year to hear it. Then, he placed the rose gently on the headstone and stood up slowly, brushing the dust from his coat. His movements were careful, deliberate, and respectful, like he had practiced this every year. Before Mia could move, he turned his head slightly in her direction. For a brief moment, their eyes met. He did not look surprised. He looked sad. He adjusted his hat and walked away, passing her hiding spot without a word. Mia waited until he was completely gone before stepping out. She walked over to the grave and looked at the inscription again. Eleanor Grace Whitmore, beloved daughter, loyal friend and keeper of dreams, 1986-2010. There was nothing unusual about the grave, just a few dried petals from past visits, and the fresh white rose now resting quietly at the base. But something about that man's eyes stayed with her. Deep, tired, and full of stories untold. She wondered what kind of love could bring a person back every single year for 15 years. She wondered why he never missed a birthday. And most of all, she wondered who he really was, because according to Eleanor's family, she had never been in love. Mia looked back one last time toward the path where the man had vanished. A strange feeling stirred in her chest. Not fear, not love, but a deep curiosity. Something told her that this was not just a ritual, it was a promise. Later that evening, Mia could not shake the image of the man's eyes from her mind. She stood at the window of her small apartment, watching the rain tap gently against the glass. The town below had gone to sleep, but her thoughts were wide. Awake, who was he? Why Eleanor? And why did it feel like this story was far from over? She decided to visit Mrs. Linton, her boss, and the town's unofficial historian. If anyone knew anything about Eleanor Grace Whitmore, it would be her. The old woman greeted Mia with her usual warm smile. "You followed him, didn't you?" she asked softly, pouring tea into 2 mismatched cups. Mia hesitated, then nodded. "He saw me, but he didn't say a word. Just walked away." Mrs. Linton sighed and set down the teapot. "He's been coming since the year she died. Quiet as the moon. But nobody ever knew who he was, not even her family." Mia stirred her tea slowly. "Do you remember Eleanor?" "Oh yes," said Mrs. Linton. "Sweet girl. Smart, always had a book in her hand. Worked part-time at the library and tutored kids after school. Her death was sudden. Car accident just outside the valley. She was coming home from a weekend trip. No one knew who she went with. Was she dating anyone?" Mia asked carefully. Mrs. Linton frowned. "Not officially. Her parents always said she was too focused on helping others to worry about love. But who knows what a heart hides? That night, Mia's curiosity turned into obsession. She visited the public library the next day and asked to see the archives. The librarian handed her a folder containing Eleanor's obituary, a few photographs, and a memorial program from the funeral. As Mia flipped through the yellowing pages, something fell out of the folder, an envelope. It had no stamp, no address, just a single word written on it in faded ink: return. Inside was a folded letter, aged but clean. The handwriting was neat, elegant, and full of emotion. Mia began to read. You told me not to come, that your family would never understand, that we could not live a lie. But I promised you I would return, once every year, on your birthday. And I have. Even if the world forgets you, I won't. L. The letter ended there. No signature, no date, just the initial. L. Mia held the paper against her chest, her heart racing. This was real. The man had written this. The same man who still returned year after year, keeping a promise long after her death. But if the letter was never mailed, how did it end up here? She returned to the flower shop the next morning and told Mrs. Linton what she had found. The old woman looked at the letter with trembling hands, then said, "Look, that could only be Leo. Leo Harris." "Who's Leo?" Mia asked. Mrs. Linton's eyes went distant. He was Eleanor's best friend in school. Quiet boy. Brilliant mind. Left town after graduation. Never came back, until apparently now. Mia's chest tightened. The pieces were starting to come together. A silent visitor. A letter that never reached its owner. A promise kept through time. But something still did not fit. Why did Eleanor never tell anyone about him? And why did Leo choose to return only on her birthday? Mia felt like the past had started breathing again. Gently, quietly, but unmistakably. And something inside her whispered that she had just opened a door that should never be shut again. The next few days passed slowly for Mia. Though she went back to work and tried to stay focused, her mind kept drifting back to Eleanor, Leo, and the mystery buried between them. She reread the letter every night, searching for hidden meaning in the words, trying to feel what Eleanor might have felt. A promise that had lasted years after death. There had to be more to this story. On the following Sunday, Mia visited Eleanor's parents. They still lived in the same brick house with blue shutters, now faded by time. Mrs. Whitmore answered the door with gentle eyes and a kind voice. "You're Mia, right? The florist's girl?" Mia nodded. "I'm sorry to intrude. I've been learning a lot about Eleanor lately. I admire her. And I had some questions, if that's all right." Mrs. Whitmore invited her inside and offered her a seat near the fireplace. Mr. Whitmore came in soon after, sitting silently beside his wife. Mia hesitated, then pulled the letter from her coat pocket. "I found this," she said quietly. "It was hidden in Eleanor's old file at the library. Do you recognize the handwriting?" Mrs. Whitmore took the letter, her fingers trembling slightly. Her eyes scanned the lines slowly. Then she closed her eyes and let out a soft breath. "It's him," she whispered. "Leo?" Mia asked. Mr. Whitmore shifted uncomfortably. "They were close. Too close for our comfort," he muttered. "He wasn't from a family like ours. He was always quiet, distant. We didn't think he was right for her." Mrs. Whitmore touched her husband's hand gently. They loved each other, quietly but deeply. She wanted to tell us, but we refused to listen. "Did you force them apart?" Mia asked softly. Mrs. Whitmore looked away. "Not directly, but we made it clear she would have to choose, and she chose us." The silence in the room grew heavy. "She left that weekend to meet him, didn't she?" Mia continued. Mrs. Whitmore nodded slowly. "She said it was just a getaway with a friend. We did not question it. But the night she died, she had been crying. Her phone was broken in the crash, and we never found any messages." Mia's voice dropped to a whisper. "She died thinking she had lost him." Tears filled Mrs. Whitmore's eyes. "And he has come back every year, hasn't he?" Mia nodded. A long silence followed. Mr. Whitmore stared into the fire. We thought we did the right thing. But maybe we took away the only thing she truly wanted. As Mia left their home that evening, her heart ached for Eleanor and for Leo. Their love had not ended in anger or betrayal. It had ended in silence, forced by fear and pride. And yet, he had never broken his promise. He had returned. Every year. For 15 years. Mia stood once again at Eleanor's grave the next morning. The white rose was still there, beginning to wilt. She looked around, half hoping to see Leo's silhouette in the distance. But the cemetery was quiet. She reached into her coat and pulled out the letter again. Then, carefully, she folded it and placed it at the base of the headstone, under the rose, like a hidden secret being returned to its rightful place. As she stood, a quiet thought crossed her mind. Maybe the past was not meant to be rewritten, but it could still be honored. And maybe, just maybe, some promises never died. The following days brought unexpected warmth to Elmsworth. The skies stayed bright. The air carried the scent of early summer. And yet Mia could not shake the chill that the story left on her heart. Eleanor and Leo's silent love haunted her. Thoughts, not in a painful way, but in a way that made her feel strangely responsible, like their unfinished story was now hers to complete. On the evening of June 20th, 5 days after Eleanor's birthday, Mia was locking up the flower shop when she noticed a man standing at the edge of the parking lot. He wore a familiar long coat, his back straight despite age pressing on his shoulders. His face was turned toward the horizon, where the sun was slipping behind the hills. Her breath caught. It was him. She hesitated for a moment, her hand frozen on the lock. Then, as if pulled by an invisible thread, she walked toward him. Her footsteps were soft against the gravel, but he must have heard her because he turned before she could speak. For the first time, she saw his full face. Lines traced his cheeks and forehead, stories carved by time. His eyes were tired but deep and kind, filled with a sadness that seemed both ancient and personal. He didn't look surprised to see her. "You've been curious," he said quietly. Mia nodded. "I found the letter." He looked down for a moment, as if something inside him had just stirred. "I wondered if anyone ever would." "I know about you and Eleanor," she said. "Her parents. They didn't approve. She went to see you before she died." He sighed, eyes fixed on the darkening horizon. "She was going to leave everything behind. We had plans. That night I waited for her at the old train station. She never came." "I'm sorry," Mia whispered. "She told me," he continued, voice low, "that if anything ever happened, I should not come looking for revenge or answers. Just remember her the way she was, and return on her birthday." Mia felt her throat tighten. "And you kept that promise." He nodded. "I have nothing else left." A silence followed. Not uncomfortable, just full. "I think she never stopped loving you," Mia said, her voice trembling. "I never stopped loving her," he replied. She reached into her bag and handed him a small photo she had found in the library records. A black and white picture of Eleanor reading on the grass, smiling at someone just outside the frame. He took it in his hands like it was a fragile piece of glass. "I don't even remember." "Who took this?" he said softly. Mia looked at him. "You did." He gave a faint smile and nodded, folding the photo gently and placing it inside his coat pocket. "Thank you. I think her parents understand now," Mia added. "They know they were wrong." He looked down, then met her, eyes again. "Too late. But thank you for telling me." As the final rays of light disappeared behind the hills, he turned to walk away. But after a few steps, he paused and looked back. "You have a kind heart," he said. "You remind me of her." And with that, he walked into the dusk, his figure slowly swallowed by the growing night. Mia stood there alone for a while, her eyes misty, her heart full. Something told her this was the last time she would see him. The story had lived long enough in silence. And now, maybe, it could rest. Summer faded slowly into autumn, and the days in Elmsworth grew shorter. The leaves turned golden, and the wind whispered through the trees like forgotten songs. Life moved on in the quiet town, as it always did. But for Mia, something had changed. The encounter with Leo stayed with her like a chapter she kept rereading. His words, his eyes, and the silent weight he carried. All of it settled inside her like a story that still had one final page to turn. She continued working at the flower shop, but each time she arranged white roses, she paused longer than before. Each petal reminded her of Eleanor, of promises, and of the man who kept one even when no one was watching. One morning, as Mia was sweeping the floor, Mrs. Linton walked in with a small envelope. "This came for you," she said, handing it over with a curious expression. No return address. Mia frowned and opened it carefully. Inside was a folded note, written in the same elegant handwriting she had seen on the old letter. "Thank you for listening, for caring, for letting her be remembered. I will not return next year. The promise has been fulfilled. L." Mia stood still, the broom resting against her side. She read the note again, slower this time, letting each word settle deep. She knew what it meant. Leo had said goodbye. She left work early that day and walked to the cemetery alone. The sky was overcast, the wind cold. When she reached Eleanor's grave, her breath caught. There, resting gently against the headstone, was a single white rose, fresh, carefully placed, and tied with a ribbon. Tucked beneath it was a small photo. Mia picked it up gently. It was a picture of Eleanor and Leo taken long ago. They were sitting on a bench near the lake, smiling at each other. Not posing, not aware of the camera, just lost in the moment, the way real love often is. On the back of the photo, written in the same steady hand, was one final line. "She waited for me at the edge of every year, and now she has taken me with her." Mia sat down on the bench beside the grave, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. She looked at the photo again and whispered, "You kept your word." Later that evening, she visited the train station. The bench where Leo had waited all those years ago was still there, faded but standing. She sat there for a while, watching people come and go, thinking about time, about choices, and about the invisible threads that bind one heart to another. That night, she wrote a letter, not to Leo, not to Eleanor, but to herself. A promise that she would not let love be buried under silence, that she would speak when her heart ached to, and that she would never wait too long to tell someone they mattered. Sometimes, Mia thought, the greatest love stories are the ones never told aloud, but felt in the quiet moments, kept alive by memories, and ended not with a kiss, but with a white rose. The next day, she placed the letter and the photo in a small frame at the flower shop. Above it, she wrote a simple message. "Love never leaves, sometimes it just visits quietly once a year." A year passed. Elmsworth bloomed once more in the gentle hands of June, and the breeze carried the same scent of lavender and memory. Mia had taken over the flower shop after Mrs. Linton retired and moved closer to her son. She renamed it Eleanor's Garden, and above the counter, she kept the framed photo and letter just where customers could see them, but not too obviously. It was not meant to draw attention. It was meant to honor something sacred. On the 15th of June, several townspeople passed by the shop, glancing toward the cemetery. For the first time in many years, the iron gate stood still. No one walked up the gravel path. No long coat, no white rose. He did not return. Mia knew he would not. She had known the moment she read the letter last year, but a part of her had still hoped for one more glance, one more silent goodbye, one more rose. As the hours passed, the sky began to darken with the soft touch of rain clouds. Mia took a white rose from the refrigerated case and wrapped it in a cream ribbon. She closed the shop early and walked slowly up the hill, just as he had done for so many years. She reached Eleanor's grave and knelt beside it. Her hands brushed gently against the stone, cool and quiet beneath her fingers. "I brought it for you," she whispered. She placed the rose beside the headstone where the last one had been. A small, folded note was tucked into the ribbon. "Your story is safe now. It was never forgotten. Mia sat there for a long time, feeling the wind move around her like a whisper. And in that stillness, something shifted. Not in the air, but inside her. For so long, the love between Eleanor and Leo had existed in silence. It had survived without names, without public recognition, without photographs or stories in books. It had existed in a yearly visit, in a single, white rose in quiet footsteps up a gravel path. And now, it had ended. Gently, completely. Not every love story needed an audience. Not every love needed to be loud. But every love deserved to be remembered. Mia rose slowly, brushing the grass from her dress. As she turned to walk away, she looked back one last time. The grave was still, the rose in place, and the wind carried. No sound except the rustling of leaves, but in her heart, she felt something she could not explain, like a whisper tucked between time and memory. She smiled to herself and walked back down the path, her steps steady, her heart full. Sometimes the truest form of love is not in the words spoken or the time spent together, but in the promises kept in silence. Love does not need to be seen to be real. It just needs to be remembered, honored, and passed on through kindness. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes in love that never fades. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever made a promise to someone that changed your life? Subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories that stay with you, just like this one. And remember, some love stories visit quietly, but leave forever.